Hello and welcome to the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life. My name is Kyle Case and I'll be your host on this amazing journey as we attempt to help you get the most out of your life. You know, here on the Active Life, we talk a lot about sports, recreation, activity, nutrition, and rightfully so. These are all very powerful tools in your tool belt as you work to give yourself the best possible life. But the active life can take on many shapes and sizes, and today's guest is a perfect example of that. A native daughter of the West Coast music scene, Caroline McCaskey is equally at home in the traditional, improvising, and classical musical worlds. She is the musical director of the San Francisco Scottish Fiddlers and the 2019 U.S. National Scottish Fiddle Champion. Caroline is also a two-time international musical saw champion. In demand as an educator as well as a performer, Caroline is the author of the well-regarded alt strings fiddle method. She holds degrees in musical composition as well as performance, and she also is a Suzuki teaching certified in both violin as well as the cello. She also runs altstringsacademy.com, which is a learning community for amateur adult string players of all levels who are ready to build their technique, style, and musical skills. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited about this because, as I said, we spend a lot of our time, rightfully so, talking about sports, nutrition, activity, those kinds of things. And as I said, important things. They're all important. We could all, maybe incorporate a little bit more of that into our lives. But there's more to the active life than just sports. And I love the idea of music and how it can help us in so many ways. I want to start off with the concept of starting later in life to learn a little bit about music. You say that many of your customers, your clients, the people that you work with, your students are in their 50s, they're in their 60s, but you even have one that's in their 90s. What is it that most of us get wrong about music, and when is the best time to start?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say that the message that we get told, and there's really no reason for it, is that, oh, it's too late. You should have started when you were a kid, and now it's inaccessible to you. But I am here to spread the word that that is not the case. Like, it is not too late. I mean, if you are still fogging a mirror, you can still do it. So yeah,
This is the qualification that we're looking for,
that's
right?
right. Yeah, I truly, I mean, music is for everybody. Is everybody who wants it. I firmly believe that, and I've seen it over and over again that it's something that can bring joy to your life, if it's something that you enjoy. Doesn't
Now,
matter how old you are.
many of us have been told, or even if we haven't been specifically told, we make the assumption that it's really a young person's game and you start young and then you get better as you go along and as you get older. But starting late is too late for you. You say that's not the case.
Yeah.
But what advantages might say, a 70-year-old have over a 10-year-old, both being just beginners? Because there are some advantages to starting a little bit later in life, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, for me, the thing that jumps out the most is that motivation factor. Like an adult is nobody's making them play the violin, right? You might even have people going like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" So that can be a challenge, but this is something a lot of times my students come to me, they go, I always wanted to play the violin and I never had the chance, but now's my chance. And that is so incredibly powerful in a way that for a kid it might just be they're getting dropped off at music lessons. It's just another after school activity, to put on the college resume or keep the kid busy or whatever. But for adults, it's really they really have like carefully considered like how they're going to spend their time. They're paying for it themselves usually. Like that's also a really huge motivating factor, right? In a way that usually kids are not paying for their own lessons. They and plus, like adults have lived life. They've lived some life. They have prior experience. They have prior knowledge. They're better able to make connections between this making the bow go straight is like keeping a car in one lane on the freeway, or something like that. I find that I can use a lot of driving analogies with adults that work really well, that for a 10-year-old is like, okay, hopefully they ride a bike, it's, it's not quite the same, that uh thing that these experiences that we share as adults. um Often they have adults have a better idea about how they learn. They might go like, okay, well, I know that I'm more of like a logical, like left brain kind of person versus like I'm very like creative and holistic and go with the flow kind of thing. um
And
yeah, a
I
lot
would
of times they're,
also,
yeah, able to correct themselves a little bit better than a kid is. Yeah, it's lots of advantages.
yeah, you talk about that life experience. I would imagine to some degree that an adult also has the confidence to speak up and say, "Hey, I'm not getting this. Can you help me with that?" Whereas a 10-year-old may be too shy, or as you said, maybe doesn't care as much at that time. There's a lot of different motivators going on, but I can imagine that all the benefits that you have just said, we see those in sports across the board as well.
Oh yeah, I bet.
But I would imagine that they manifest themselves very well and very clearly in music at the same time. Now, speaking of starting later in life, many of your students, I would imagine, have kind of carried this dream of learning how to play a musical instrument for decades. And in some cases,
Yeah,
maybe their whole entire life.
yeah.
Tell me how that feels to you, for you as an instructor, as a coach, as a teacher, to be able to kind of help people's dreams come true, something that they've been carrying around with them for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's really nothing like it. It's just absolutely incredible. It's such a privilege and an honor for me as an instructor to be able to help people unlock that piece of them that's been sometimes, yeah, like I said, for decades, sometimes like sitting dormant, like, oh, every time they hear, a cello on the radio, they go, oh gosh, I wish I could do that, and finally, they're retired and they have time, and maybe they decide, okay, you know what? I'm not getting any younger. Today is the day. I'm going to go rent that cello for a month and see what we can do with it. And it's so, I mean, just watching people's faces light up when they draw that bow across a string for the first time and they go, oh, I made that sound. It's just, it doesn't matter how old or young you are. Like, it's just like, you see that and you go, oh yeah, that person is they're doing it. They're having a real experience, and that's something that they've always wanted. And it's just beautiful. I every time it gives me chills.
I can tell it means a lot to you, and I'm sure that it does mean just the world to you, so much satisfaction, and also to your students to be able to, again, see that dream kind of realized that they've been carrying around for so long. You
Yeah.
you interact with these students. I'm sure you get to hear a little bit of their life story and some of the things that brings them to the point where they are ready. What is it that keeps people from jumping in earlier? Like, why do we wait 30, 40, 50, 60 years to pick up this instrument that has been interesting to us for so long?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, I see all sorts of situations. There's so many ways to do a life. There's so many ways to have a life. Sometimes we end up, getting, really invested in a career, or we end up being, caretakers for family members or friends. We end up, we're raising kids, right? That's just a lot of times. Yeah, and it can also be kind of difficult to watch, as much as you want to give your kids, the world. You want to give your kids like whatever you wanted as a kid but didn't have. And it can be kind of frustrating to watch them maybe pick up a violin or a cello that you always wanted to do, and like kind of go, okay, this is fine, but it's not really my thing. And and that can be, on the other hand, if you buy them an instrument, maybe then they go off to college and then you end up having an instrument, and look at that. I've seen that happen sometimes. It's like, well, if you're the one that really wanted to do it, then you should do it. But I mean, it's often, it's a time, energy, attention, and there's, the finite resources, that are, often, especially I would find people that find themselves in, these types of caretaker roles, which is, or, those of us that are part of families, find ourselves in these types of situations, for better or for worse. And we end up maybe not prioritizing ourselves, at all, really. And this, I'm sure this, you probably see this all the time, and your health can suffer. We're not taking the time to exercise, we're not taking the time to eat, prepare and eat healthfully. Same thing, like, these things that we do for ourselves, that really, if the only reason you do these things is to make yourself a better, caretaker, then that's, I mean, if you got to put it in that perspective, cool, at least it's getting done, but the idea that I like to help bring to the table as part of this holistically caring for the person, as from the teacher's perspective, is to go like, no, like, you deserve to eat healthy food, you deserve to move your body, you deserve to show up in the world and take up space, and you deserve to make noise if you want to, it's okay, it's your life, so even if that just involves like, okay, well, I'm gonna prepare a salad while my kid is taking a nap, or I'm or my I'm gonna watch a YouTube video about, how to start on the violin while I'm taking somebody to the doctor, and, they're in the appointment or whatever. It's like, just like prioritizing yourself sometimes. It's so, so important.
Yeah, it is true. And just as I said earlier, I see so many parallels between this
Yeah.
musical journey and a sports journey. There's so many people out there that have thought, oh, I'd love to try the hurdles, but oh, it's too late. And then when they finally figure out how to give themselves permission to try something new, you definitely see a world open up. I want to ask you this again. You're visiting with, you're getting people's stories, you're helping people pick up these new skills. I'm sure you have some insights in this. How do you help people overcome the fear? And oftentimes I'm sure that it's fear of failure, but fear of new things. How do you help people work through that?
Yeah, this is a huge question. It's honestly a just as big a part of my job as technical skill of like helping people learn how to do the thing, is the psychology of it, right? So yeah, I like overcoming that fear. Like for me, especially with as much like Suzuki method training as I've done, just breaking things down into smaller and smaller and smaller steps until we find something that is achievable. So it's like, okay, well, I could never place. I had a student that, I think she was in her, I think I want to say early 70s. And she had, taken some piano as a kid, not like a lot, but like someone who was like really forcing the, like, you must read music. I'm not going to play it for you. Like, this note on the page equals that key. And it was like very like becoming a typist rather than a musician type thing.
Yeah.
So her whole perspective on music, and that didn't last very long because that's like honestly no fun. And so her whole perspective on like becoming a musician was about this like decoding of sheet music. And I was like, well, there's a lot. Music is not a visual art form, right? It's something that we hear. And I think, in my studio, I really encourage people to both learn to read music and learn to play by ear. And this was something that she was just like, I cannot do this. I cannot learn by ear. I don't even want to try. Like, she was so resistant to it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So after we learned some of the notes on the instrument, and I was like, do you know how to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb? And she was like, of course I do. And she sang Mary Had a Little Lamb. I was like, okay, well, great. And I wonder, if you can sing. I found the first note I was wanting her to use. And I said, do you think you can sing Mary Had a Little Lamb starting on this note? And she was like, sure. And we like sang it together just to make sure. And I was like, well, let's play hide and seek. And I'm gonna play this, I'll go behind you so you can't see me. I'm gonna play that note on my instrument, and I want you to just, it's no big deal. It's hide and seek. Like if you're playing hide and seek, you don't find somebody on the first try, you keep looking, right? It's like no big deal. Oh no, they weren't under the bed. Like what? I'm such a loser. Not at
Yeah,
all. You
game's
just keep
over.
looking. Yeah, you just keep looking until you find it. And so we did that for the first couple of notes of Mary Had a Little Lamb, and went down, Mary had a, and then she just kept going, and like I came back around to like watch her face, and she played the rest of Mary Had a Little Lamb, and she barely got to the end before she burst into tears. And I was like, she was like, you don't understand, my life just changed. And I was like, good, it did. I saw it and it was beautiful, and I'm so glad.
What
Yeah.
a great success story. I love hearing that. Obviously, that meant a lot to you. There's no question that it meant a lot to her.
Oh yeah.
I
Beautiful.
want to ask this question. We spend a lot of our time talking to and about athletes. You say that oftentimes athletes and dancers are some of your best students. What do you think the correlation is? Why do you think that works so well?
Oh yeah, I love this. So the interesting thing about like strings specifically, like violoncello, it's sort of self-selects for like logical, like nerdy people like myself. Very like I have a lot of people who were like scientists and things like that for their careers. But ones who did, like, I have a very successful student who ran track in high school, and as an adult has like coached track as well. And I have another couple that that were dancers. There's a physicality to playing music that I think is not, um we don't really like dig into that as much as we should in music lessons. It can be very cerebral. But the body is the thing that's due. I mean, yeah, you're using your brain to control your body, but like you're not. I often will tell my very cerebral students, like, you're not just a brain in a jar. Like you need to you need to like embody yourself. And there's this hookup between, I'm going to use a couple big words here, but audiation, which is like humming, humming a song in your brain, like you hear a song in your head, and then proprioception, which is like your sense of your body in space. So the athletes are already really familiar with this, and that's the key to why they're inherently, I hate to use the word talent, but truly, like, that's something that that you have honed as an athlete. You have the ability to make adjustments to what you're doing with your body to get closer to a goal that you're trying to achieve. And for us in music, the goal is based on our sense of what we want it to sound like. And you can do something and go, oh, okay, like that didn't sound right, now I'm going to try something else. Where somebody who is like not as in touch with their body as someone with with prior like physical activity experience might really struggle with that. They would just come up against a brick wall and go, I don't know, I'm doing something wrong. It's probably my arms. I don't know. But like someone with taking who's used to taking correction, physically, with do this, like adjusting their golf swing or their whatever it is that they're doing, just have such a leg up because they have all of that prior knowledge, all that prior experience.
That
Yeah.
makes so much sense. I've honestly never thought of it in those terms, but that makes a ton of sense. Your ability to fine tune a kick turn in the swimming pool, or get that backspin on a table tennis table. I can see how that would and does translate to positioning of your bow or your fingers or on a strum guitar, or whatever it is. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that again, many people will find so much satisfaction from that. I want to talk a little bit about the health benefits. We talk a lot about the heart and brain connection. What's good for your heart is good for your brain, exercise, cardio, strength, all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of research that shows that music is really good for cognitive health and might even help in the area of cognitive decline. Tell us what you know about that.
So there's a pretty strong correlation. Of It's really hard to test for like cause and effect in something as complicated as a topic like cognitive decline. But there's definitely been research done on, is music a part of your life, and what sort of what is there this group of people that either like deeply listen to music or play music and like really like engage with it, with their mind, then they have a much higher percentage of remaining mentally healthy in that respect of avoiding dementia was specifically what they were looking at. So yeah, it's really, I mean, and I mean, of course, I'm not like here to try to say music is the only way to do that, right? But
Sure,
it's
yeah.
definitely, if it's a thing, if it's like your thing that lights you up, it can be that thing that helps you protect your brain. So it's really, I mean, like, continuing to learn. I mean, we're learning all the time about how, intelligence is not fixed. It's something that, your brain will grow by use. And, even if you feel like you're starting to lose it, you can grow it. It's
It's
just,
a muscle, right? It's a muscle.
yeah, in that way, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and so yeah, music, doing, yeah, learning a language. A lot of people like to do like the crossword puzzles and stuff like that. It's something that's challenging to you mentally, and I would argue even the act of creating things is like, it's not just like, oh, I'm absorbing information and like spitting it back out. It's like, with a language, you're like, okay, well, I learned all these words. Now here's the thing I'm trying to say, and I gotta put it together. That struggle is the thing. Or like, I want to sound like this and I'm not quite there, and I gotta synthesize a new thing that I've maybe never done before, or not quite the same. That's so, all those like that area of just enough struggle. I mean, I see that all the time. Like, that's my students who like stay there. My 90-year-old student is like, I mean, there are some areas where, like, yeah, physically, like, his fingers don't do the same things that they did 10 years ago, but he's learning new music and he's learning new techniques still. It's still there, it's still, if you're not growing, you're shrinking, right? So find a thing that lights you up, and use it to grow. Yeah.
Another great parallel between music and sports for sure.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the social aspect. We talk a lot about that with sport, but music can really connect people, even across geographic borders and barriers. Tell us how you've seen that take place in your practice.
Oh, yeah. So, music is, I mean, of course, it's something, we do spend a lot of time by ourselves if we want to practice, right? But it's often for the goal. And I find that adults are particularly aware of this, that they want to do it. This is a thing I want to do with other people. And that's really great because you have these like built-in goals of like, okay, well, I want to play in my community orchestra, or I want to go play at this fiddle jam session or something like that. And so there's a lot of stuff involved that goes into doing that in a way that's satisfying. Okay, well, I have all of these fiddle tunes that I'm going to learn one fiddle tune and I'm going to go play it, and then I'm going to find out all the other tunes that people know, and not all of them, but make a list, and get a I'm going to make a friend, and we're going to get together and play on another day. Or it's like, I mean, it's like you can work out by yourself, or you can have a gym buddy, or you can go walking in a big walking or hiking group or something like that. There's so many different ways to connect with people, and it's so cool to have something in common with them already. That really makes it's a lot easier than just standing in line at the grocery store and trying to make friends with the person behind you in line. Like, it's so much, but you already have this thing that you both like. Maybe you can talk about the musicians that you like to listen to, or like if you've been to music camp, because that's a thing for adults that people don't really know, but it's like so much fun to go to music camp as an adult. It's so good. Yeah, there's just so many different ways to do music together.
There is something about a shared interest and a common goal that really can and does bind us. And again, we see this in sports, we see this on teams, we see this in doubles partners, we see this all the time. And again, a great parallel. We've got about 30 seconds.
Great.
Biggest thing that you've learned working with older adults?
Is that, I mean, everybody who wants to do music can do it if they want to. It's, You don't need anybody's permission. If you feel like you do, here it is. You have permission
You've
to
now
go
got
play
it.
music. Music is for everybody, and I love to see people do it. Lights them up, and yeah, go find the thing that lights you up.
I love it. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your passion, your expertise. We want to wish you the very best of luck in everything that you have going on, and make a difference in the world, just like you're doing. Keep doing that.
Thanks so much for having me.
Just a couple of things to wrap us up here. A quick reminder that time is indeed flying by. Did you know that we have well over 8,500 registered athletes already? So now is the time. Secure your spot in the Huntsman World Senior Games. You can do that, as well as find all the information you need to know about the games at seniorgames.net. It's going to tell you the venues, the divisions, all the rules. The games run from the 5th through the 17th of 2026. So put that on your calendar and be a part of the games this year. Next week, we're going to be joined by Norman Calvo. He's a marathon runner, a half dome hiker, and handstand enthusiast. At the age of 70, Norman is also a mortgage banker, a certified high performance coach, and a creator of a sold-out one-man cabaret show who inspires others to turn their later years into a bold and fulfilling encore rather than a quiet exit. Today is the last day that the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life will be aired live on this radio station. But don't worry, if you've enjoyed the Active Life, and we hope that you have enjoyed the Active Life, you could still find this as well as the education and inspiration that comes along with it at seniorgames.net, where this and all previous shows can be found, as well as on anywhere that you find your favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio. Wherever you find your favorite shows, we're going to be there. If you're listening or watching the podcast, take a moment and give us a rating or write a quick review. That can really help us spread the word as well. Today's inspirational thought comes from the Dalai Lama, who once said, "Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions." Until next time, stay active.